All right, so listen to this. A Russian court hit Google with a fine, and it's for, get this, $20 decillion.
Wow.
That's like, I don't even know how many zeros, too, with 33 zeros after it.
That's more money than exists.
Yeah, it's more money than exists on Earth. What is
And
happening?
it's certainly a head-scratcher, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know, just to give you an idea, the entire global economy is estimated to be around $100 trillion.
Right.
This $20 decillion fine is 200 billion times larger than that.
It's literally not possible.
So it's clear that this is not just about recouping financial losses. This is a statement.
Yeah.
This is, a power move by Russia with some potentially big implications.
So let's break this down, because this whole thing started, I think, because Google banned a bunch of Russian media channels from YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. 17 Russian media stations are suing Google, and that includes one owned by Putin's Ministry of Defense.
Oh, wow.
The bans came after the U.S. imposed sanctions on Russia after the invasion of Ukraine. And you see, these sanctions, they were meant to put economic pressure on Russia, and they targeted various individuals and entities, including the owner of Tsargrad.
It's Tsargrad.
Which is an ultranationalist Russian media channel.
I remember reading about them. They were banned from YouTube back in 2020, I think.
Yes. And this is where it gets really interesting. The court imposed a fine, and it seems small at first.
Okay.
But it doubles every week.
What?
That's the power of compound interest.
Oh, my God.
So week 1, maybe it's a few $1,000s. Week 2, it doubles. Week 3, it doubles again, and so on.
Wow.
Until you reach a number so big that it basically becomes meaningless.
So this fine is like a runaway train just gathering steam and speed as it goes.
Exactly. And that's how we get to this crazy number.
Yeah, but hold on. Didn't Google pull out of Russia last year?
They did.
So how can they even be fined by a country they don't operate in?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of the issue. Google essentially withdrew from Russia, which they crippled their operations there.
Right.
So their Russian branch is essentially bankrupt.
So then what is Russia trying to do with this fine? They can't possibly collect it. Are they just trying to make a point?
It's possible. I mean, think of it like Russia could be using this fine to send a message not just to Google, but to any company, really, especially Western tech giants that are operating within Russia's sphere of influence. This could be seen as retaliation for complying with U.S. sanctions.
Right.
And for what Russia sees as censorship.
So it's a power play then. They're saying, may not be able to collect this money, but we'll make it hurt.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely creates a hostile environment for foreign companies, especially those in tech.
Yeah.
It raises serious questions about the risks and challenges of operating in a digital landscape that's becoming increasingly fragmented and politicized.
So we have this impossible fine, a company that's already left, and a message being sent to all the other tech companies out there.
Right.
What's the bigger picture? What does it all mean?
Well, if we take a look at some broader trends, we're seeing this case with Google, and the astronomical fine becomes even more significant. We're seeing governments, not just Russia, but all over, they're really trying to get more control over online content.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get more influence over these big tech companies.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, we've seen this play out in other countries, right? Like China has the Great Firewall.
Right.
And there are restrictions on social media platforms in places like Turkey.
Exactly. And this trend makes you think about the future of the internet. I mean, could we be heading towards like a fragmented digital world?
A fragmented internet?
Yeah, like instead of one global internet, we have all these separate internet spaces that are controlled by different governments.
So instead of this global online community that we're used to, we would have all these like separate walled off digital spaces that are controlled by these different governments. It sounds kind of dystopian.
It really does. And it has the potential to completely change the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a world where what you see online depends on where you live.
Wow.
It would change everything. Freedom of information, access to different viewpoints, even economic activity.
So this case against Google with this crazy fine, it's not just about the money. It's about a much bigger struggle, right? A struggle over who controls the digital world.
Exactly. And this is a struggle that could affect all of us.
And this makes me think about that Register article we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The one where Google was fined $374 million back in 2022.
Right.
Just for allowing content about the Ukraine war. It seems like Russia's been squeezing Google for a while now.
They have, and those actions help us understand what's happening now. They show us a pattern of behavior, a strategy to control information inside Russia and to push back against what they see as Western influence.
So they're testing the limits, seeing how far they can push these tech companies. But what I find interesting is Google's response. They don't seem that bothered by this massive fine in their last earnings statement. They barely even mention it. It's like they're playing chicken with Russia.
That's a good point. Google's acting like they think Russia's all bark and no bite. They're probably betting that Russia can't really do anything to make them pay this fine outside of Russia.
Right.
They probably think Russia can't touch their global assets.
So what does this mean for other companies, especially the ones working in countries where the politics are similar? Is this a sign of things to come?
It's definitely a warning. It shows how risky and complicated it can be to do business in places where governments want control more than openness.
It also makes you think what will happen in the long run. I mean, if countries keep going in this direction with more fragmentation and control, what will happen to the internet?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, will we see a future? Will we see a future where the internet isn't this global village anymore, but it's more like a bunch of digital islands, each with their own rules and regulations and restrictions?
Like a digital archipelago.
Yeah.
That's kind of a scary thought, and it raises a lot of questions like, what happens to the free flow of information in that kind of world? What happens to businesses that need to communicate and work together across borders?
Those are really important questions, and honestly, there are no easy answers. The internet is at a crossroads. The idea of one open and connected internet is facing some big challenges from governments all over the world. Governments that want to control what happens in their own digital spaces.
It's like a tug of war between two different ideas.
Yeah.
The early internet was all about openness and connection, but now there's this growing desire for control and regulation.
That's a great way to put it. And the outcome of this tug of war is going to affect all of us as individuals and as a global society.
So where do we go from here? What can we do as individuals to deal with this increasingly complex digital world?
That's a great question. I think it's really important for all of us to be aware of these trends and to talk about them. We need to be critical thinkers about the information we see online. We need to question the sources we use and look for different perspectives. We also need to support policies that promote openness, transparency, and accountability online.
It sounds like this case against Google, even though it seems ridiculous, is a wake-up call. It reminds us that the future of the internet isn't set in stone. We need to actively shape it and protect it.
Exactly. The internet is a powerful tool for communication, collaboration, and innovation. But it's also a space where there's a lot of competition, and powerful forces are fighting for control. We all need to make sure that the internet stays a place of openness, freedom, and opportunity for everyone.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's amazing how a weird case about a $20 decillion fine can lead to such a big conversation about the future of the internet. Thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise.
It's always great to talk about these important issues with you, and thanks to everyone who's listening.
And to all of you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about. Keep those questions coming, stay curious, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.